Welcome back to another episode of Focus on EDU, EdTech, and the Education Experience. I'm your host, Doug Conopelco from CDW Education. Today, we are talking with a couple of students, a couple of amazing student leaders, is probably how I should say it, about building future leaders and also making connections and just understanding some programs that exist out there to help folks who are looking to become leaders in the space. So, Emily and Freya, welcome, and just really quickly give us an intro.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emily Jaremba. I'm a fourth-year biochemistry major at Saginaw Valley State University, which is in Michigan. We were part of the Chief Science Officer program throughout our high school careers, which focuses on building future STEM leaders, both through 6th through 12th grade. And they do a lot of action planning, community involvement, talking with different STEM professionals to really build those STEM connections within their community and school districts, and also help create them into future leaders of tomorrow.
Thank you. Freya?
As you just mentioned, I'm Freya. I'm a third-year neuroscience student at the University of Arizona. And Emily and I were in the same program for a few years together in high school. The CSO program is really focused on amplifying the student voice in STEM and exposing students to resources that they can take back to their communities and putting the power in their hands to enhance both their understanding of what's out there in STEM and also the local understanding in their communities.
I love it. So, Freya, maybe take us through a little bit of what your involvement looks like, because I know Emily said 6 through 12. So, talk to me a little bit about how you're still involved and what that program and process has looked like so far.
So I joined in high school. I was at a Title I high school, and I had been asking my different counselors about STEM opportunities. And one day, our college counselor said, "Hey, are you interested in this Chief Science Officer program? Would you be interested in representing our school and joining some representatives from our district?" And so I looked into it, and it was really aligned with what I was interested in. The CSO program is all about empowering students to take what they can out of their state and regional STEM networks and just bring it back to their communities in ways that their specific audience can benefit from. And so I love that because that's what I was looking for. I was trying to build a STEM program at my high school. And through involvement with CSO, I was able to connect to resources at local universities, community colleges, build events that focus on career readiness and internship kinds of opportunities for students in my local region. And this was just super transformational as a student. It's these vague ideas of things you can do, but that involves a lot of on the ground work, cold emailing people, setting up meetings, interviewing, establishing projects. And as college students, that was something I think both Emily and I, we wanted to give back to the program that through involving us in all those things really changed who we are and how we saw ourselves as young professionals. So by joining the alumni program, we're helping to mentor those 6th through 12th graders that are going through the process that we went through.
All right, Emily, anything to add there?
Yeah, with the alumni program that Freya and I kind of helped to implement and start up internationally, we also want to support the high schoolers that are graduating and transitioning into that new chapter of their life, whether it be the workforce, into college, or some other path. So not only are we giving back to the current CSOs, but we also try to support the alumni in their next chapter, whether it be through networking, making those connections, offering them mentorship opportunities within industry, and different things like that. Professional development has become a major focus as well for us, as we want to make sure those students are ready to move into that new chapter.
So, Emily, what does that look like, right? How do you stay in touch with the current CSOs, and then why was it so important to build that bridge?
Yeah, so we actually kind of started this program during COVID, believe it or not. So the virtual world kind of helped us out, being that we're scattered throughout the entire world. So we've become very used to using Zoom or other online platforms to stay connected and be able to see each other face to face. We like to hold different meetings, monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, with those professional development opportunities or other way, get back to the CSOs. Within our specific regions, we try to pair different CSO alum with current CSO teams if they could help out with their action plans, or just give them mentorship advice on how to actually implement their plans. We also can give back during cabinet meetings or during the Summer Leadership Training Institute, where they can go back and help teach a session and develop those leadership skills with the current CSOs.
Freya, what kind of skills do you feel like are most important when we're thinking about, building future leaders?
I think the most important skill that the CSO program helps build is the networking. A lot of students don't get that kind of exposure to the level of networking that we use, and we train students in a very safe way. Like when they're in 6th through 12th grade, they don't use their last names, they don't use extra identifying information, and they work with verified partners through the CSO program. So this is a safe environment for them to explore, use business cards, set dates and meetings. There is the idea that an individual can only tell the stories that have already been shared with them. So the CSO program is a great equalizer in that we expose students to all sorts of stories, all sorts of different industries that maybe students who don't come from a STEM oriented background or a very STEM focused community, they can really benefit from that. And as Emily was talking about, we wanted to keep that focus for students who might wind up at smaller colleges, who might be in totally new environments post-graduation and may feel a little disconnected from their network. Honestly, most freshmen feel disconnected in some way or form, and the support of the CSO program doesn't need to end in high school.
So, Emily, same question to you. What are some of the most important skills you think we need to build for our future leaders?
Some of the most important skills, I think, are adaptability and the growth and confidence within each individual. The CSO program throws a lot of different challenges at these students, especially in middle school. To think that they're going to plan a community-wide event or a school-wide event, or even something just for a single classroom, is quite daunting at first and can be intimidating. So building that confidence within these students is very important and shows them that they are capable of doing these great things for their school and their peers. Mentioning adaptability, even when I was in high school before COVID, we had these plans set in place and they may have fallen through. So we had to change our project, make some changes, see what we could do to still be impactful for our students and peers. And so I think that's a really important skill set that we all learned, especially during the pandemic, and we're going to continue to see throughout normal life as well. And being able to adapt to these changes and still do something very important and successful to help our peers.
You mentioned the international side of the CSO program. I think that's one thing that a lot of people, as they're building out their networks, they don't have, right? They don't have that larger network, especially internationally. I think we tend to kind of build our network and the people that are right around us. So, what does that international spread of the network look like so far? And where do you hope it goes?
So with the CSO program, when I first started, I believe we were in only like 4 regions in the United States, but then we also had Mexico and Kuwait, which before the program, I had never even heard of Kuwait. So it was a great learning experience, as well as to meet people from different cultures, different backgrounds, to see how they implemented STEM within their communities and the differences. And like we mentioned with that network, I think it helps to bring more diverse ideas, share unique experiences, and help implement them in our own regions and take from each other and learn from each other. So as we continue to grow, which I know we're expanding to a lot of new countries this year as well, I hope that the students continue to network around the world, get those new ideas shared among each other, and implement them within their own schools and communities as well.
Freya, do you have any experiences so far with that international community within CSO, and what does that look like?
I think, I was not born in Arizona, but pretty much raised in Arizona my whole life, in the States my whole life. So it's been really interesting to meet CSOs who are from Kuwait, who are from Sonora, Mexico, and hear about how the structures that they're interacting with as STEM leaders are much different. in terms of getting their projects funded by the government, in terms of getting their projects locally funded, in terms of what the average community member knows about different STEM industries. Their focuses are very similar, but also somewhat different. And I think in terms of those individuals who are interested in going into industry, this kind of globalization, this kind of the same ideas reflected differently in different regions, it's a very interesting one, and it's one to get used to. I think like there's lots of exciting things happening like across various regions. Canada just started a CSO program. We have one in the works in Israel. There are CSOs in Kenya. So especially post-pandemic, we're rebuilding a lot of those international bridges, and the opportunities that different CSOs are exposed to are different in those regions. And the fact that students in Arizona can hear about what students in Kenya are doing to build up their communities, and they can take those ideas and adapt to them, super beneficial.
Yeah, I think it's always excellent when people can, learn from each other, but also grab things from different contexts, right? So, I happen to be in the education world for the last 15 years, but I love reading things from outside of education, right? Because then as you're reading that book, you start to say, okay, how would this apply in our world? Right. So I think that what you shared there is a perfect example of that, right? Is that they might be trying to solve a totally different problem in their region of the world, but it might knock something loose in your brain to say, oh, like, how could we use that here, right? How could we adapt that here? So, we talked a little bit, touched a little bit on like making connections. So, how does this program or other programs that exist like it help foster and create those connections for the students?
One way the CSO program specifically fosters those connections is by taking the students to different industries within their region. So here in Michigan, for example, we would go to Dow Chemical Company, which is an international business, and they'd get to network with all these different industry professionals and make those initial connections. And I believe they do 2 or 3 of these visits per year. So if you're in the program for a few years, you really start to make connections, learn new members within our community, and then you can even invite them back to your school or community to help other students also build their networks. And then you also make those connections with other CSOs and meet new friends from other districts within your region, even from other states and regions and countries, like we mentioned. So it's really about fostering that network and making those connections throughout to continue to grow and help you as hopefully once you graduate college, maybe use those to your advantage later on as well.
Freya, same question to you.
Very similar setup to Emily. In Arizona, there are several community partners that the CSO program exposes students to. CSO was started in Arizona with the SciTech Institute, so we do get that cool benefit, and that we get to kind of meet people and see people who've been there from the start. For example, TGen is a medical research institute in Phoenix, and sometimes there'll be representatives from the institute. There'll be people who can talk about some of the research they've done. And when I was hosting programs at my high school, it was about 45 minutes from there, we were able to get speakers who worked there to come talk to students at my high school about bioinformatics, about some of this next generation sequencing work that they do. That's not a connection that I would have made had I not been in the CSO program, not perhaps because TGen wouldn't have had said yes, but because I personally wouldn't have felt comfortable asking someone from a big institute to go out of their way to come to my high school. I couldn't really give them anything except like, some like treats or something small, like as a high schooler. And I think there's just that element of not feeling like you have the right to like make inquiries or asks of people in industry, of people in these positions. And as a CSO, like that goes away. When we are at these leadership training institutes, they're like, your job is to bring back STEM to your community. Your job is to be a STEM ambassador, and you have the right and you have the dignity and you have the power to bring those resources back. And you're expected to. If you don't, that's on you. And once that expectation is built in there, a lot of these barriers that we see, imposter syndrome, feeling like students, because like historically people like who look like them or who come from their background don't do these things. They're like, should I do this? As a CSO, you're told, yes, you're doing this. And for some people, that can be really transformational.
Well, it sounds like it's in addition to being told, like, yes, you can do this, it's also providing you that structure and support and saying, like, giving you that, yes, you can, yes, you're going to be able to. Yeah, perfect. All right. So, really love everything that you both have shared so far, taking us on a little journey with you through CSO and through building future leaders and building those skills and making connections. So, any other parting thoughts before we head out today? I'm going to start with you, Emily.
I would just encourage current students to get involved with different programs when the opportunities arise. Personally, the CSO program specifically, but other programs that are out there can also be very beneficial in building personal confidence, making you build your network and helping that as you continue on with your life post high school. And I think those connections and that confidence are very important. Prior to this program, I was very shy, never wanted to speak in front of people. So I think getting out of your comfort zone, trying new things, and that personal growth aspect are extremely beneficial and something that I encourage other students to seek, and for teachers or parents to encourage that with their students and children as well.
Love it. Freya, parting thoughts.
On that same note of encouragement, I do strongly ask businesses, teachers, community leaders in STEM to consider more like how else can you as an individual support students in becoming not just part of STEM, but STEM leaders? Are there student advisory boards that could be implemented when you're planning out new directions? Are there different ways to integrate the student voice? Recently, some of the alumni helped take some CSOs to an international conference on STEM ecosystems. And it was really impressive to see how these students came up with solutions similar to what industry leaders were talking about in terms of how can we elevate STEM in our communities. I think there's so much power in that student to student sharing, student to student STEM exposure that can be harnessed if only we give these kids, give these leaders a seat at the table and opportunities to resources that they can use to shape their communities and their futures.
Love it. Thank you both so much for being on today, sharing some of your stories and experiences with us. Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can be notified whenever we post new content. Looking forward to seeing you next time.